Welcome to the Previously Rockhounding podcast, where we explore the world of rockhounding and lapidary from the ye olden days of the 1970s and 80s through the lens of vintage issues of Rock and Gem magazine. If you're a new listener here, the way this works is I read the issue, Sarah reads the issue, we don't discuss it at all, and we come together here on the podcast and share our thoughts on it.
Yep, and we're at episode 7 this week, or this episode. We're looking at Rock and Gem magazine from April 1976.
And almost all of the things that we're going to be discussing here, you can view them up on the website, currently rockhounding.com/podcast. There's little photos of some of the ads and some of the interesting stuff. So definitely go check that out. You can't get it anywhere else on...
Anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere. That's the word.
So this issue was the 1976 Rockhound and Lapidary Guidebook, so it is it was a big one.
Yeah, it was definitely more page-wise. It was only a couple. It was only a couple of pages more, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
It looks thicker.
There's
more glossy pages.
Yeah, there's more glossy pages in it, and just generally speaking, I felt like it was more content-rich than what some of the previous ones were.
Yeah, I certainly noted significantly more than I have in any other issue so far.
I have 6 pages of typed notes here, so...
I don't have that much.
Yeah, well, I do.
But I mean, I know there was a lot of content ad-wise and column-wise, as well as just regular articles. So
yeah, so
a lot in it. Get to it.
Yeah, we should start with the ads.
Well, one thing I look at when I'm looking at the ads is ads that are not for rock or lapidary equipment.
I do that as well.
Because there's really not many. I mean, I've mentioned before, like, there was one that said, like, donate blood to the Red Cross, or there's one for, like, a safe. This one had a number of things. There was an ad for giant binoculars that astronomers, big game hunters, ornithologists, yachtsmen, four-wheelers all agree you must own a pair.
I saw that as well. It's completely ridiculous. You have, like, the littlest kid holding up what is most likely
normal
size pair of binoculars, but they look extra big.
I don't know. Have we really used binoculars? We've used them when we're out rock hounding, like, look over there at that bird, or like, what's that structure on top of that mountain or hill over there? But I don't know if we've used it like to aid in our rock hounding. So, I mean, I guess it is a very good complementary item to rockhounding.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little fun, like, when we're out and sometimes we see birds.
Yeah,
we'll, like, pull them out, but we're really not, like, what's that rock over there?
Yeah.
Let's get the binoculars. They were expensive.
Oh,
they were very expensive. The more expensive ones were some 20 by 80s, and they were $159.95.
That's like $500.
When you adjust it for inflation, $812.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot.
In today's money.
That's a lot.
So the company who put that ad is called Novatron, and there's another company. I tried to look it up if they were related. Celestron. I don't know if they're like Novatron and Celestron are still like is this what they formed into? But today on Amazon you can buy some 20 by 80s for $157. So in 1976 you could buy some 20 by 80s for $160. Now $160 basically.
Same price.
Which that's funny to think about, like they're the same price. I mean, economy of scale, like those definitely stand out as a lot.
Another couple ads that were a little bit of a stretch. There's 2 ads for bags. One was a Rockhound bag, ideal for carrying lunch, rocks, first aid kit, specimens, or what have you, and it was 10 inches by 12 inches by 2 3/4 inches.
It was a purse.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Did you pick up on that it's red?
Yeah, I did like that it's a bright red canvas. I thought that's smart.
But I feel like it's just like somebody got like a couple of pallets of purses and they're like, Rockhound bag.
Well, the company selling it was United Abrasives.
Oh, I didn't see. I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, were they like buying some type of like surplus? Like, because I think I know United Abrasives and they make like sandpapers and like different grit product. Like, that's funny.
Yeah, I thought it was just an odd thing all around.
Well, that's also ridiculously small.
Yeah, like you can put lunch and rocks. Like, you barely fit like a bottle of water. Did they have bottled water in the 70s?
They definitely had canteens of water.
Well, like I'm thinking like a little plastic.
That's I know they had like water bottles like that you'd have for like a bicycle.
Right.
Those existed.
Just like a throwaway, single use case of 24 you buy from this,
No, you just drink like Miller High Life or Miller MGD long necks.
Yeah, but aren't those more than 2 3/4 inch
you could put
diameter?
You could put you could definitely put a 6-pack of beers in this Rockhounding purse.
You think so?
One way to find out.
Contact United Abrasives.
Be like, one purse, please. There was I think let's see, there's another one.
Yeah, there's another bag?
No, you
okay, there's another bag. It was just a leather pouch, and it wasn't really for rockhounding. It's just like leather pouch made by Stash Bags. But I thought it was interesting because it was horsehide.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't sell. I don't know if people would be into that now.
No.
But just like a leather bag, like a little it didn't even have any connection to rockhounding. But
there was an ad that really stood out that you really wouldn't see nowadays, and that was somebody selling carved elephant ivory.
Huh.
And obviously, there's laws against like poaching elephants and cutting their tusks off. So that's not something you would really ever see at all. There was an ad from Good Now Gems USA, and it was a full-page color ad selling parrot wing, which was a new discovery from Mexico. And the ad reads, "Parrot wing is an agatized stone of bright green, yellow, dark green, red, brown, and black and blue chrysocolla, and it's found in almost every piece. Occasional pieces may be entirely bright green or blue chrysocolla. This material is well agatized and quite hard, takes a good polish." And they're selling it, they suggested in the ad that you should buy at least 2 pounds at $12 a pound. So like $24, which that was a lot of money back then. But I thought it was interesting because, when we read these magazines, we come across trade names for rocks where you're like, what the heck is this? Like, this thing, like turtle shell. Right. And you're like, okay, what's a turtle shell? We try to look it up, we find nothing. Parrot wing is still a thing. It's kind of a trade name for like chrysocolla with like different swirly patterns in it. And like you can just hop on Etsy right now and type in like parrot wing and you'll definitely find some. So I thought that was interesting to find a trade name that's still there.
Lost to time.
Yeah. There was a full-page ad from Gemstone Wonderland, and they had a full-page ad they just called the ad "Fire Sale," and like the font was like drawn like the words were burning, and they were selling boxes, so you could like buy individual things, but they were selling like a parcel, like you could get a bunch of different stuff, and they had one parcel which they called the Red Hot parcel. And it was all stuff from Australia. And it was 5 pounds of dendritic agate, 5 pounds of Queensland agate, which I don't know what that is, like 5 pounds of yellow moss, 5 pounds of tiger eye, and 5 pounds of chrysoprase, and it was $45.50, which is $250 in today's money. And they're just like, I can't imagine.
That's like 25 pounds altogether?
Yeah, but I can't imagine today buying 250 pounds of stuff sight unseen.
Yeah, that's the sight
Like,
unseen seems.
I know I'm very spoiled in that, like, we have the internet. Like, there's no way anybody's selling any type of rock on the internet without showing it.
I don't know. Maybe if you buy like a bunch of rough, they're probably not showing you all.
Maybe not that, but like generally,
Yeah.
like
You're spending
unless you have an
$250.
Yeah, if you have an established relationship, like if I made an eBay posting right now and just copied this stuff, no photos, it would get 0 bids.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does eBay even let you sell without a photo now?
I don't know.
I can't remember the last time I saw an ad
Probably
without
not.
a photo.
Yeah. There was an ad that I didn't really get for junior jewelry polishing and buffing set, and I couldn't tell if it was like for kids or just small, and they're calling it junior. I mean, they had like a photo of a kid using it, but I'm like, I don't know. Are kids into like an all-in-one machine, and they're like, it's only 6 pounds, and so it's good for kids because it's light. Like, I mean, you wouldn't be moving around. Like, that's.
It was definitely interesting when you see some of the stuff marketed to kids in these.
Yeah.
You're like, this is. I can't imagine what the water testing kit that we saw in the previous episode. Like,
today's kids would not be into that.
Yeah, they don't want to have a water testing kit for their birthday.
Or a all-in-one jewelry polishing and buffing set.
There was probably one of the more interesting ads I've seen up to this point. Not so much because of the message, but because of the artwork in it. And it was the Chaparral Rockhounds. They had a really odd-looking ad with a very, very normal message. So, I mean, it was a simple ad. They're just like promoting a rock show. This is the Rocky Mountain Federation show in Roswell, New Mexico. And, you know, it's just like what you would expect, right? But the artwork was like the most 70s style artwork. It was very, very odd choice of graphic. It has a woman holding a crystal, and she's looking at it with this like loving gaze. It had an old-timey miner holding his pick to the air and yelling with a glowing gold pan. It had a Spanish conquistador pointing a sword. And it had a sitting woman, and she had no pants on. Like, you could see her butt cheeks.
I know what you're talking about. I thought I wrote something down for that.
Yeah, you could see her butt cheeks, like squishing out, like she's sitting on the ground.
Yeah, it was...
And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
But there is.
What kind of show is that? Like that weird motif.
Yeah, the weird Rocky Mountain. I wonder what that Rocky Mountain West Federation show was. It was like, but there'll be a photo up on the website currently rockhounding.com/podcast, and then it's under show 7. You can see this ad for yourself, which it's quite the sight to behold.
I swear I wrote something down for that, but I'm not seeing it.
Did you write down how amazing it was?
I think it was. I saw it in the last issue. I think I just didn't describe it very well. I saw another ad for a show at the Eastern Federation Gem and Mineral Show in Massachusetts, and it was a pretty big ad, and it wasn't like fancy like that. There wasn't any lady butts on it, but it just described the stuff that they were going to have there, and it sounded like a cool show. You could see the world's largest faceted gemstone, which is a 12,000 carat piece of topaz.
That's cool.
They said there'd be 60 dealers. They had trips to historical bicentennial sites and field trips, lectures, and micro mounting.
Oh.
And I was like, that sounds like a great show versus like shows we go to are like, okay, we're gonna like see people selling the same stuff basically, and like hopefully there's some good cases.
Yeah.
Versus like lectures, field trips. So, only 60 dealers for like, I feel like most of the shows we go to have at least 60 dealers, if not more. Like, thing to look at, the world's largest faceted gemstone, like it's much more of like a destination, like spend a day at a thing versus like walk around and look at stuff you want to buy.
there's lectures and symposiums at Tucson. And they definitely have an educational aspect to that show. And that's not something I've ever really seen covered in like social media or things like that. People talk about it. People will talk about like some of the classes and stuff on like Mindat or whatever. If anybody out there wants to just buy me a plane ticket down to Tucson, I'm happy to go cover the symposiums. And they have a micro-mounting symposium, which...
Yeah, I mean, you don't see micro-mounting mentioned much, so that was interesting. Interesting that they're like, we have it here.
Did you have any other ads you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, there's a couple. There's one... I don't know if we've talked about this one, but I know we've seen ads that are like, invest in these rocks. And this one was like, invest. The world is running short of genuine stones.
Oh.
And like, sure it is.
And today when we go rock hounding, everything's plastic.
Yep.
No more
out of genuine stones.
Ran out. That's funny.
I definitely think this one had more ads than usual. I mean, it's like I'm not sure if it's the, 1976 Rockhound and Lapidary Guidebook. Do they do one every year?
I think so. I think they do one every year.
This is like the big one where like, gotta get my ad into this. This is the one they have more circulation.
Well, maybe you can update us. You should count the number of ads in this one and then count the number of ads in the next one.
That's a lot. It's a lot of counting. There was a couple things that, again, weren't rocks or lapidary equipment, but they were more rock lapidary adjacent. There was a company called Westland Physics selling a Gold Rush game. It was like a card game. And they're selling the card game, and then they're selling like 6 pieces of like pyrite with a little instruction sheet like separately for some reason. They didn't really explain what the game was. I guess just like people who are like, I'm into gold and I have grandkids, send away for the Gold Rush game. I'm not sure how they were expecting to sell it. There was a Rockhound guided tour to Mexico that they're like, right, for information, no obligation, and like the person lived in like New Jersey. It's like, that seems hard to organize a guided trip when you live in New Jersey to Mexico, but they did not say their prices or any very much detail.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of guided trips. There's a couple of people doing guided trips still, but I personally think they are very, very expensive for what you get, which it's not like, generally, they're not taking you to private property. Yeah. They're not taking you to claims. They are taking you out to public lands that you can just go to yourself. So. Yeah,
I don't know if you didn't want to do and you had no confidence in yourself to do research. You're just like, I want to go rock hunting in Mexico. This guy will take me. Instead of spending hours and hours like researching, planning an itinerary, getting the books.
Maybe international is a little different. I mean, if you're
also pre-internet.
Yeah, pre-internet. Yeah, that makes it a little harder. Sure, I'll give you that.
Last one was there was an ad for a new find, Biggs Jasper.
Because it's funny because we've seen Biggs Jasper in previous issues.
But was it like relatively new in the 70s? They're like big. It was like a shop and it was placed in Biggs, and they're like Biggs Agate and new find Biggs Jasper.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, was it 68? Is when the Highway 97 Biggs Jasper discovery happened when they had the big washout. I'm not 100% on that. You guys can correct me. Go back and watch the China Hollow video.
Newish.
Yeah.
Less than 10 years.
I guess you can still call that new. So the glory hole, the editor's column, was a little meh this time around.
Yeah.
Like, he's still hopefully you've listened to some of the previously Rockhounding podcasts. The editor went down to Baja, California, and had wrote an article, and he's been talking about it in the column like every single month. I actually bought the book, so we have that. But yeah, he's just kind of like continuing chatting about going down to Baja, which I get it. Like that's probably good content because
That's probably what he was doing for a very long time.
Maybe I shouldn't have skipped ahead and read and bought the book.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Because the book didn't come out until after this, so...
yeah, he was like trying to promote his book.
Pretty much. And it's funny, too, because if you bought all of these Rock and Gem magazines, and then you bought the book, you would have been like, oh, like, there's, like, nothing in the book that's not in the magazine. He's basically taking little chunks and just, like, kind of adapting them. Like, even the photos are the same. But still, that's kind of cool, right?
That's a big, wasn't he only there, like
12 days?
12 days? I mean, it's not that much time, but I probably spent a lot of time thinking about it and making the book and writing stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there wasn't much to that. I didn't really note much on most of the columns. So.
I noted a lot on the Frantic Fumbler because months ago he put out a call in some earlier issues looking for ideas on how to use lapidary equipment for non-lapidary uses. Yeah. And this month we have the winning ideas of those that were submitted. So there's just so many. I could have. There's a lot of very silly things that he chose to pick. One of the ideas was to use your rock tumbler to churn butter. You can just put all the ingredients in the tumbler, seal it up, and start it going, and butter.
Gritty butter.
A 60-80 grit butter.
Yeah. Yeah. What? I mean, it was like one guy, like kid who had a bunch of silly ideas that he printed, and it was like, oh, you could use it for washing things, like one single sock.
Like, I like that one. So using the rock tumbler as a washing machine, you can only put a sock in it. It's great for a college kid with a dirty sock.
One sock. I mean, the obvious of using your grinder on your nails. That's obvious. I liked what they said. You put your graham crackers in your tumbler, and it becomes crumbs, and you make a pie crust.
I like taking your vibratory lap and heating it, and then you put pancakes and eggs on it, and then it has a grid texture so that it won't slide off your plate.
Yeah.
Because that's not
your plate also has a grid texture to interlock.
They didn't get that far in the idea. That's. I mean, if you really think about it, like, there's probably a million like off uses for some of this stuff. I mean, I don't know. Especially other hobbies, like, I mean, there's like an overlap of metalworking and stoneworking, like where the polishing of things can kind of all coalesce, but that's not really, I guess, like an off use. The shop talk. I kind of thought that the shop talk column was a little lame this month. It talked about shells and how many rock and lapidary shops have been starting to sell shells as like a side item and how to work with them in your own shop. And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I really didn't think going into this podcast project that there's going to be as much shell-related things, but
they're really trendy.
Yeah, I guess they were. 70s. Like, I don't think of some of this stuff as being a thing anymore. Now, granted, we do not go to many rock shops, but I don't think of rock shops nowadays as having shells, having sideline items, having a lot of dyed stuff. Like, one thing that we saw previously was shops selling rock dye. So you could just be like, I'm going to take my quartz and I'm going to dye it blue. Like, that's not really a thing that I think anybody's doing.
No.
So.
Yeah.
We kind of have another column that was really extended out. So one thing that we don't typically talk about on podcast is like the what's new column, because it's really just like
it's usually pretty short, and it just is like, this company came out with this product, this company came out with this product, and there's like a brief description of it, and
some of them duplicate. Like, it's really just like kind of an ad almost.
Yeah,
like,
I think it's like companies send stuff to the magazine, and in exchange they like print a little paragraph about it. Probably that's so kind of an ad.
Is there any electron microscope manufacturers out there? Anybody want to you send me an XRF gun, and I will mention it for the low price of $28,000. You too can be mentioned here.
Mm-hmm. Well, so that's the What's New column. They significantly expanded it for this issue for What's New for the entire year. They described their What's New column as reflecting the ingeniousness of our advertisers every month. So, yeah, I guess it's their advertisers also being like, here's our ad, here's our money for the ad, here's some equipment too. So it's like, I guess that's how it is. And it was just a long list of products to buy.
Yeah, some of them did stand out to me. One of the first things that stood out was the vertical wet belt sander from Covington Engineering, mostly because I want one.
Oh.
Other than, yeah, and that's the only thing about that. I was just like, I like this, I want one.
I don't know, was that pretty early in the list?
Yeah, that was like one of the first things.
Because like, how closely did you read it when you're like, okay, page 4, page 5?
I read it all. Did you zone out?
I didn't. Yeah.
They had an ad. I don't know. I'm going to say ad. I'm going to call them ads. Or one of the products was the Gemstar 6000, which was a convertible machine that you could change from a trim saw to a horizontal lap. So for modern listeners, think like the high-tech diamond brand stuff. Like imagine if you were able to take that trim saw, the little 6-inch trim saw, and stand it on the other end. So now it's flat and just put a flat lap disc on it. Because basically all this lapidary stuff is just turning a round thing. It's like different methods of spinning something round. So that was one thing that you don't see much of anymore, like kind of convertible things. Probably because they're not the best. It's like a Swiss Army knife kind of is handy, but it sucks at all the things.
Yeah.
Like it's not the best knife, it's not the best saw. It's just because what you have. But yeah, I think just generally speaking, as I went through this list of products. There's a lot of multifunction machines that you just don't see anymore, and it's kind of poorly. They're generally poorly designed versus a dedicated machine. Even today, like Lower Town, they have their combo units. Companies make some combo units, but it's not like this weird like, okay, flip the whole machine over, brand new machine. Yeah. Like that's not really a thing.
One of the first items was the world's smallest binoculars. And then literally the next page was the ad for the giant binoculars. I thought that was funny. Like, did they do that on purpose?
I would like to think that they had somewhat of a sense of humor.
But also what am I using the world's smallest binoculars for?
Being a spy.
I guess. There was... One product was a home protection system, so like a alarm to put on your door and window.
It was kind of an elaborate write-up on it.
It was, which sure, like if you're making jewelry or you have a lot of equipment, then you might be interested in a home security system. But I don't know if it's. So what did they send? The editors of Rock and Gem, the home security system, and
did somebody already have it? And then they reached out and were like, you should be an advertiser.
That's quite like the cold call to be like, Rock and Gem, home security system. Yes,
gotta protect
these
your
two
gems
things go together.
And rocks. There was an item called a thermal reaction tester. Did you read this one? Okay, so a thermal reaction tester for detecting oil-treated rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. And it can also detect if turquoise has been wax treated or plastic impregnated, like stabilized. So you, the listener, how do you think this device works? Well, hopefully you said it burns it, because basically it's a soldering iron.
Yeah.
It's a soldering iron, and they're just like, yeah, it gets hot. It's like a little box, a little like a transformer box, and a pen, and it just the tip gets hot, and you're like, is this thing got wax in it? Like, melt it.
Yeah.
Like, test this. Like, oh, will this burn? I'm like, look, that's quite the stretch. Also, are you going to be like going up at like at a show and be like, yeah, let's see, does this melt? And then like you melt something? Like, no, like what?
Yeah, I mean, how much? Seems like a very niche product anyway.
I mean, you should hopefully be able to visually tell. But
yeah, you're like potentially wrecking your thing that you bought by melting it a little.
Or if you're testing before buying.
Yeah, I guess that's how you like get the seller to really fess up if you're like, oh really, nothing plastic in this. Let me just take my hot pen and stick it right on it.
Swat it out of your hand.
I mean, there's a lot of equipment that I don't really have much interest in, so I didn't really go too in depth on it. The only other thing I noted was the bond solvent for injury protection.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get glue on you, it'll take the glue off. And they're like, it's the only place that makes this. It's not proprietary, but they're the only place that makes this bond solvent. Okay?
I can't remember what it is, but it's not proprietary. I can't remember the name of the chemical.
Yeah, it's not. They're just people putting, we're like, bond solvent. What could we call this? Bond solvent. I know, bond solve. That's how they made their money. Bond solve.
Well, there is a number of articles in this one, probably more than some of the previous ones. Some were obviously better than others.
Yeah.
A couple I really liked.
I didn't.
The article, #1 Rockhound Trail in the USA. It's pretty much was an article describing the different localities along Highway 395, interesting like rocks and minerals that you can find. So Highway 395 runs from the Mojave Desert through like eastern California, and I forget if it dips into Nevada.
Yeah.
And then
they mentioned
then heads up through eastern Oregon, and then into eastern Washington. So they weren't really like a lot of details, but they're like, oh, when you're in this town, you can find blank, blank, blank.
Yeah, it was very general kind of advice. It wasn't like, pull off here, there's this road, and then go up here and you'll find this. It was just kind of like, in this area, there's this.
Yeah, like an example of some of the generalness of it. They said when you get to the Burns area in Oregon, around the town of Burns, rockhounds try to find black dendrites and white plume agate, but you may have to travel further east to do so. That's all they said. They're just like, yeah, it's kind of around, but you might have to go somewhere else. Like, wait a second. How did you come to this conclusion?
Yeah. They mentioned, I mean, so they start in like Central California, like Southern California. Whatever. Yeah,
it's like down in the Mojave, so it's kind of like 395 starts to the east of San Diego, basically.
So, I mean, I'm not familiar with that, but I'm only familiar with more northern Oregon, and they're like, oh, Burns, Ochoco, and then they're just like, gold. And you just have gold there. Like, there's so much more stuff out. A lot of stuff out there, just not gold, but a lot of stuff they mentioned, I don't know, it's kind of like, it took me some time to get into it, because they weren't like, okay, we're driving this road, it goes from here, we're going to go from here to here. And they're just like, oh, start here. And this place, yeah, you could go there, but it's closed now. Oh, yeah, you could go here, it's sold now. And then like, oh, yeah, there's a rock shop. Oh, yeah, there's active mines around here. Oh, there's a ghost town around here. Like, it was...
I wondered if they were even driving it, or if they were just taking pre-existing knowledge and like putting it together, like, you know, almost like if you're asking somebody like, oh, what's out here? And you're like, oh, there's some of this, some of that. And like, you know, I mean, if somebody was just like, Jared, tell me what you can find in Central Oregon.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I don't know, thunder eggs, agates, limcast, obsidian. It's just kind of like that.
I mean, I don't think they didn't indicate that they had actually driven it.
Yeah, but...
And it's a really long ways.
Yes.
And they're saying, like, go off to this town here and go, so, like... You know, I just wasn't clear on what the point of it was. That were they saying you should drive this?
I think so.
Because they didn't drive it, so I mean, why should I drive it?
Well, and they also stopped at the Oregon-Washington border.
Right, I know. Like, I got towards the end.
I was thinking, like, cool, they're going to get up to Washington, and we live in Washington, and we live in the desert. We live in the eastern Washington. I'm like, cool, they're going to get up here. We drive on 395 all the time.
Know.
Let's hear what they have to say. Oh, no, they're just like, done.
And then it just
Washington
stopped.
doesn't exist. Don't go.
I know. Yeah, it was very disappointing that they stopped. I mean, why... How much more effort to just do the rest of Washington?
I know.
I mean, they're just being very generic. They could have like got some maps of like mining districts and been like, yep, mines. There you go.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, all of the places they mentioned in this are from the Gem and Mineral Atlas, which I bet you could go in and they're just like, yeah, I bet you all of those things are on there, which... Sure.
Also, I was trying to... Why did they call it #1 rock trail in the USA?
I don't know. They've said that about a couple of different things.
Yeah, they're like... I was like, oh, is it like Highway 1? Is it like no, they just said #1 Rockhound Trail.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best.
I guess they weren't... I don't think at any point in time when they were publishing this in the 70s, were they like... Somebody's going to be reading these back to back to back to back every week and critiquing them 45 years later.
They probably didn't think that.
They didn't.
Still, you can be like, hey, how many #1 best ever Rockhound spot articles can we do? Maybe like be a little more creative. Mm-hmm. That's all. There
was an article that I really liked, and that was homemade equipment, because I am a fan of jerry-rigged, cheap, and interesting stuff that people make. Do lapidary, cut rock, stuff like that. So it was an article kind of exploring Michael Reeves' homemade equipment.
Who is the guy who made the bear claw jewelry a couple issues ago.
Yes. But he made a centrifugal caster inside of a tub salvaged from a washing machine. Mm-hmm. So it spins inside this and spins out the molten silver as an example. He turned an old sewing machine with a foot pedal into a trim saw, which that's pretty cool. And he also made his own mud saw, which nobody... I don't think many people probably listening even know what a mud saw is. Do you know what a mud saw is?
I mean, it was a really, really big saw.
Yeah, but do you know what a mud saw is?
He said it was a mud saw because the dirt and water mix. I don't know. What is it?
So, okay, modern day lapidary saws are, you have a metal disc, a blade, and you have diamonds on the edge, and that cuts. It doesn't cut. It grinds the rock away.
Okay.
Mud saw, imagine you don't have diamonds. You don't have synthetic diamonds, real diamonds, whatever you're using. Well, you just take that, you just cut the metal disc out of a piece of sheet steel, and the mud is grit in water, like you'd have for a tumbler. Yeah. So, it cuts, ridiculously slow. Imagine cutting at 1/16 of the speed of a diamond blade, but you can just make it at home, and it's very cheap. And if you don't care about 100 hours to cut through a rock, that's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it was interesting. Like, mud saws are not something anybody does anymore. I mean, maybe in like third world countries, but even they have gotten away from the mud saw, I think.
Oh. Yeah, it was like it described all of the random things he made his equipment from, like pieces of old cars, stoves, sewing and washing machines, back scratchers, bricks, and rubber balls.
He didn't say how he used the back scratcher.
He didn't.
That's also a thing I don't see much of anymore.
Back scratchers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid growing up, a back scratcher, and it was like it was wood. Yeah. It was like wood stick, and like it had, the hand was plastic, and it was like a little person's hand.
I thought it was interesting, the guy's story about how he got into rocks. He said he like went to a gem show and he hadn't had any exposure to like rocks and lapidary, and he like went there and he was like, oh, this is awesome, and he sold his hunting and fishing gear and started making his own lapidary stuff. I thought that was cool. I'm not sure someone would go to a rock show now and be like, time to give up my hobbies and get into this.
No more guns. I'm just going to have rocks.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's...
It is a transition.
I gave up some hobbies
Yeah.
in getting into this more. Like, I sold my lathe.
Yeah.
I got out of some metalworking stuff.
True.
And, you know...
True. But would you go to a rock show and then be like, this is the hobby for me?
Possible.
The rock shows were like they were in the 70s, yes. Now, not so much.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of rock shows, there was an article, our first rock show, and
yeah,
I thought it was pretty good. I liked the article. It's about a couple's first rock show that they vended at, and I thought it was neat.
Was it their first rock show they vended, or the first one they like went to? Because it sounded like they didn't know what to expect.
Sarah throwing the magazine around.
Well, there's a great quote. I want to be ready.
It was the first one that they had vended at, and then they also like were walking around. I think I didn't fully grasp whether or not it was the first one they ever been to, but it was definitely the first one that they vended at.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really, really good, like to kind of have that like little bit of insight into that kind of process, I guess.
And they were selling jewelry that they had made.
Yeah.
And they also had an educational, like how a cab is made kind of display, and he was doing demonstrations too.
I love that. When we go to a show and we see cases and it's like the rough rock, and then like a slab, and then or like it's rough rock and then like a polished slab and then a finished cab of the material, so you see all three stages of it. Like everybody, if you put a display case together, please do that because I enjoy it.
Well, he also like wrote up some little short paragraphs to go with each step and like used simple basic language so everyone would understand. And he said people loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody that goes to shows, even today, like you can be like, ooh, pretty rocks. But if you're like, ooh, pretty rocks, and oh, this is where they came from, and this is like what they are,
like
and this is
you're the person who made it standing right in front of me.
Yeah, it's the context of it, like that really kind of sets stuff apart.
There was one part in that where, he was like, oh, like we talked to so many good people, and he was talking to someone who said, when you study a new piece of rock found in the field, how do you know it will polish up halfway decent? And the guy says, by its feel. And he says, no. Next rock you pick up, try the tongue test. Lick the surface. Wait 1 second. Lick it again. If there's any noticeable drag, it's not polishable. Or it's probably not polishable.
Well,
that sounds disgusting.
I have a beautiful red piece of cinnabar in Orpiment that would disagree.
2 licks on it.
Oh. Yeah, don't go putting stuff in.
But also, like, what's I mean, he's
If
missing.
If that guy was alive today, he'd probably be on a Facebook group giving that advice. And
He's missing the step of like make sure it's really clean and okay to put your mouth on. I don't get. So you like get it wet, and then you get it wet again and see if there's drag. Like that doesn't make any sense.
well, kind of.
What's the idea?
So the idea is you're testing the porousness of it, right? Like.
Can you just use your eyeballs?
Yes. Yes, you can just use your friggin' eyeballs and look at something and be like, is this very porous, like a volcanic rock with little bubbles, or is it something like a quartz crystal that was not formed in an igneous manner and has no gas bubbles and is very, very solid? You can use your fingers, right, and do that.
Feel it.
You can, if you're really concerned, you can also get stuff wet.
With your mouth.
No. No.
Yeah, that feels like, I don't know, was it just like an old timer trying to like trick the new guy?
No, it was just an idiot saying dumb stuff. That's all that is.
Oh.
That's all that is. You know how many rocks our dog has peed on? A lot.
Yeah.
You know what?
Too bad she doesn't pee on it twice and then rub her paw to see if it's.
I'm gonna teach
drag.
to pee on only agates,
Oh.
and then we'll leave agates places. Urine-soaked agates. Yeah, I also wrote down that quote, typed it up.
It was ridiculous.
There is an article that I wish was much longer, and that was the miniatures of George Holloway. Like, I saw that, and I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Oh, wait, nope, it's like one paragraph.
Yeah, it was very short.
Yeah, so it was a very short article showcasing the collection of George Holloway. He had a very impressive collection of thumbnail specimens.
Well, they're saying they're miniatures in that it's under 2 inches, or like fits in a 2-inch box.
Yeah, so
that was like the criteria for them. So they're not like super tiny things.
They go in the thumbnail size box.
Sure.
So depending on how much of a purist you want to be, thumbnail boxes are generally looked at as being like 1.25 inches by 1.25 inches being a thumbnail, and then people will be like, yeah, but like this is also a thumbnail, and it's like the Federation rules or like a 2x2 square. And people are like, okay, well that's a toenail, and like I don't know why we're comparing everything. There are thumbs and toes.
That's weird.
But basically just like very beautiful small specimens, and he had a very like impressive collection, and it was kind of he was talking about like going and competing at the Federation show, which so there's the whole world of competing at shows.
Does that still happen?
It does at the Federation level. I don't know of any local. I mean, sometimes at a local rock and mineral show, there will be like a best case where you go through the door and they give everybody a ticket.
Yeah.
And you walk around, you look at all the cases, and you write the number on it, and then you like dump it in a box on your way out, and you like.
And that's just like a popularity vote.
Yeah, who has the nicest case, like type of a thing. But the Federation shows like there's like strict criteria. Even with a Federation display case, they'll be like, I think it's you can only have 10 items in your display case. Or for things like micros and thumbnails, they take into account like the ratio of space within the box, presentation. Like there's a lot of like stylistic things that they account for.
I mean, it just seems like who can buy the most nice looking and correctly shaped sized mineral.
Yeah, how much money do you want to trade for an award?
It doesn't, I guess you have to have an eye for knowing like what is the right size and what's going to look good in a little tiny box, but it doesn't really seem like
It reminds me a little bit of the rock tumbling competitions where people cheat.
Oh.
Yeah.
How?
Like, go take it. You want to cheat at a rock tumbling contest? What you do is you take your rocks and you grind them out on a cab machine. You fully shape them so they're flawless, right? And then you finish tumble them in a vibratory tumbler so that they just have that like beautiful wet polish all the way around, and it's all very similar. There's no standouts, and you're the best. The way to guarantee that you're going to lose at a rock tumbling contest is use a rotary tumbler and hope that you're going to have successful stuff. Because the way these contests work is, let's say like your blank club, and you put out an ad or you have it up on your website, and people pay you money, and you send them the rock. Like, you don't get to pick the rock. They give you the rock, and you send them your top 3 back. You just cheat. That's what I think a lot of people do, and that's just my take on it, because
at least you're doing something. Like, you need the skill to shape the rock and have the vibratory tumbler versus just like, I mean, now you're just like scroll through eBay and you like find something and you buy it and you're like, sweet, this is the right size and it looks cool. Put it in a little box. Hope I win. Like, it doesn't seem, I don't know, I just think like skill should be involved in competitions.
I kind of like the display cases because like that's more subjective because it's random people walking through the show and not your fellow club members.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the thing. And then you can really be like, oh, well, like what has the nicest presentation? Like, I don't know, whatever.
Also, it said his miniatures were displayed at shows, which we've read a few times of like, this guy has this collection and he's going to display it at this show, or like this guy's miniatures, he displayed it at this show, or that lady's like found object art was like in demand for all the local shows. Like, I think something like that would be. It seems like they don't mention like cases, so I don't know when rock shows started having cases.
Cases have always been a thing, but then they would also reach out to people with extra like, cool collections.
Yeah, there's no, like, it sounds like they had exhibits, and that would be cool to have.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know why that went away, but the cases stayed. I guess it's just hard to find someone whose stuff you want to exhibit, or I'm not sure why, but people like looking at, I mean, most people going to a rock show, they're just looking at most of the stuff anyway. They're not buying much.
Maybe
I mean,
we can
a couple pieces.
Make people have exhibits again.
Yeah. You did skip over one article, minerals for a bicentennial year. Did you write anything down for that?
I did not.
Well,
wait, did I? That's a good question.
It was pretty long. I believe it was before the one we just talked about, so maybe you didn't. Well, it was called Minerals for a Bicentennial Year.
Yes, I did write stuff down for that. Sorry, I screwed up.
I thought you were going to skip it because I didn't really write anything down. It was just significant mineral discoveries of the past year. And they're like, in Mexico, we got this stuff.
So...
in Brazil, they found this stuff. In the U.S., hey, red, white, and blue.
I didn't understand the direction of the article.
Yeah.
Because it makes it out to be like the name, like minerals for a bicentennial year. Like that makes me think like something about America because 1976 is America's bicentennial, and it's not like Brazil and like Central America. So, but then they just went on to talk about all these different minerals from all around the world, almost like a recap of like international markets. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah, it kind of was just a recap.
Like, that has nothing to do with America. Why are you calling it bicentennial minerals?
Because 1976 was the bicentennial year. And that's, you don't even need to say 1976. You just say bicentennial year, and everybody knows what you mean. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't really... I guess
I'm changing the subject real quick. I am somewhat of a fan of those on-the-street interviews where they ask people questions and they make them look really stupid. I wonder how many people even know when the bicentennial is. If we just went and we're like, when's America's bicentennial? How many people would be like, 2000? Like, nobody even knows.
Well, they did know in the 70s. You probably knew in the 80s too. Yeah, I don't know. It's just mineral disc. I'm curious. I assume that's just something they put in every, what do they call it? The Rockhound and Lapidary Guidebook for the year issue. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, they were like, in America, we've got this red, white, and blue. Here's a red mineral that was discovered in a blue and a white. And I guess that was the link. I don't know who the audience is for that. Like, I
don't know. Not me.
Because I mean, it's just, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Who do you think the audience is for Gifts from Your Tumblr Part 3 from everybody's favorite writer, Dixie Douglas? Who's the audience?
People who aren't too handy?
I think it's people that own a bottle of glue. Because
yeah, you only own glue.
In this installment of Gifts from Your Tumblr, yeah, it's just basically like, what are all the things that you could glue a rock onto?
Wasn't that last part 2 also?
Yeah, she just picked some different stuff. I
mean, she was like, you can glue a rock onto a ring, you can glue it onto a necklace, a pin, like a shade pole for like...
That was the one that I liked. Was like, if you have like mini blinds, like little knob, you can make a little knob.
Yeah.
That like for pulling the blinds up.
People have those.
We had them in our kitchen up until like a little. We started our remodel.
Oh, yeah, but we never pulled it. Also, those blinds don't come with a pull anymore. It's just like built in. Like it's not like a dangling string because that's dangerous.
I'm thinking about making this like extreme choking hazard.
Yeah. And
it doesn't have the little plastic breakaway knob at the bottom, like.
Yeah, I guess that's a good use for what you get a rock and you like drill a hole in it. I think she was just gluing.
I think she was gluing. She like glued a little cap onto it with a bail.
That doesn't seem ideal because you kind of grab and pull at it.
Yeah. One thing that I didn't really know anything about was Ming Thing.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so yeah, she mentioned a Ming Thing tree.
Yeah.
And these are things... Ming Thing trees are things that I've seen before, and we've seen them actually at rock shows in cases. So pretty much, imagine you take a, let's say, palm-sized, hand-sized, fist-sized rock, and you take wire, and you twist the wire around that rock, and then twist it up like the trunk of a tree. So you have like the wire holding the trunk to the tree. It's almost like the roots going around the base rock. And it branches out, and you put little polished rocks at the end, and it's kind of like this little wire and polished rock tree.
Look neat.
I've seen those, but I didn't ever have the name to connect to it. I was never like, oh, that's a great Ming thing. Like, but that's what they call them.
She didn't like describe how to do it.
It
seems like a whole sort of hobby doing that. She's just like, you can make these. Seems like more of an advanced skill.
For those of you that watch the YouTube channel, if you go back to the Spokane Rock Rollers 2022 show video, there was a display case that also had a little stone Snoopy on a little stone house that had a bunch of those. That had some of those trees in there as well, and Snoopy. I wonder.
Stone Snoopy?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Stone Snoopy. That was one of the best things. I wonder if in Gifts from Your Tumblr Part 4, she's going to talk about making a stone Snoopy in Woodstock.
Yeah. I had the feeling this was the final installation. I don't know if there's going to be a Part 4.
Well, maybe Dixie Douglas will rear her head again in future issues.
One thing she said was you take a rock and you use it as the center of a icing flour, like cake icing flour, and you put it on a cake.
Don't bite it.
Yeah, she's like, oh, nobody's choked on it yet. Oh. You don't really even see the rock that much when you make an icing flour, unless she was making more simple ones, and I am thinking of. Usually you just put like a ball of frosting and you like cover it basically, so I don't know why. That didn't seem like a great idea.
There was an article that I had a hard time getting through, and that was the jewelry making article. Now, I'm not sure how accurate the article was as far as like discussing jewelry, but they made some huge critical mistakes in that article, and I was really like, I have to fact check literally everything in this because it's really bad.
It was just like the earliest known jewelry is here, then we know about this, we found these, and it had like drawings of stuff.
Yeah, I question it because it started out by stating that jewelry making began in the Stone Age, which was 10,000 years ago. Well, the Stone Age actually started 2.6 million years ago.
Wow.
And so like they're very off on some of this stuff. And then it lasted to 3,300 BC, and that's when the Bronze Age started. So like, for their little history lesson at the beginning, I'm like, all right. And then later in the article, they state that some of the earliest creating of skillfully made beads and rings and belts and pendants go to the Egyptians of the Neolithic period, which extended from 10,000 to 4,000 BC. But in ancient Egypt, the Neolithic period, which shifted based upon like the different cultures, like Neolithic period of ancient Egypt is different than elsewhere, lasted until the Proto-Dynastic period, which was 3,150 BC. So yeah, like they try to make it out to be this whole like, oh, I'm gonna like educate you. And I'm like, well, wait. Even basing it off of their numbers at the beginning, they're like the Stone Age, 10,000 years ago. That's when it started. Oh wait, but also the ancient Egypt's 10,000 years ago. Like, wait, no, like you guys you're stretching it here. You're not thinking it through.
Yes, so it's like that really long history of jewelry, and then they're like, well, what trends are we seeing like for the next year? And that was it. But I thought it was interesting, the trends. They're like, jewelry trends in fashion, men's body jewelry, even big muscular men are having their ears pierced. And I'm like, for women, sweaters. That's not. So men are getting their ears pierced and women are getting their ears double pierced. Was that really that new? Like, didn't people have crazy pierced ears back?
Not in 76. Oh.
Well, it must have like really taken off because I feel like people had very pierced ears in the later 70s to the 80s at least. I thought it was interesting. I guess maybe is this true? They said Iran's currency was backed by old ancient jewelry.
I'm not sure. I didn't look that one up.
Yeah.
I stopped after I was like, oh wait, your Stone Age date is totally wrong. I'm like, I'm not going to sit here and read Wikipedia entries for every stupid thing that they said in their stupid article.
Well, if it's true, it's interesting. There was not even like an article, but a little listing of faceting teachers. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting. They listed one of the colleges here, but like no name. They're just like the college. Like everything.
Just call their directory.
Yeah, everything else is like somebody's name, but this one's just like no, the college, the faceting teacher. You're like, well, at least put the person. Clearly, there was a faceting teacher there. Why not put their name?
There's an article called "Setting Up Shop," and it was an article discussing on how to kind of like set up your own like rock lapidary shop, like some of the different machines that you might want in your shop. They did make a really good point though that I kind of agree with, and that's the importance of having a nice shop space, like something, and that can mean whatever to you, but like having that kind of like calm, like peaceful, distraction-free place, like is kind of a big deal when you're trying to like focus and like work on stuff, which I don't that isn't something I've ever seen discussed.
Yeah.
When, like there's a lot of shop talk things in these magazines and even today, and nobody's ever like, have a place that's nice. And I kind of like that. There was, however, one thing in this article that when I read it, kind of made me mad. Kind of as kind of like, this is mad. The author was recounting a time he went to somebody's basement sale, I guess like a garage sale, and passed through a small room of equipment for like faceting and that. And it had a shelf of books on the subject. And he was surprised because he thought he knew everybody that was into faceting in the area. And he was like, expressed his interest and found out that there was a man who taught himself how to do faceting, all from the books, and belonged to none of the clubs and never went to rock shows. He just like got some books, got the machine, and his wife proudly showed him the trays of gems, and he said that they were terrible. He was just like, yeah, they were terrible. He literally said that in the ad. He's like, yeah, she came and showed me the gems that he cut, and they were awful. So I left. He said I left a note inviting him to visit our faceting group, but never heard from him. The moral of the story is, don't sit in a corner by yourself. And I'm like, that guy sounds like a dick.
Yeah.
And like, I have seen people's faceted gems that have only been self-taught, bought the machine, watched the videos, bought the books, and taught themselves. I have an extensive library on subjects of rockhounding and minerals and geology and all of that stuff, and I've learned so much from them. I think something like 80 books on these topics, right? And to think that somebody would be like, dumb, you're dumb. You didn't go to our club. Like, get the hell out of here with that. Like, that guy's dumb, right? Like,
yeah. What did his note say? Was it like, hey, looks like, Yeah,
your stuff sucks. Like, you should come down to.
You need some instruction. You should come to our club. I'm like, why didn't he contact us?
Yeah, like if that guy was alive today, you'd just be like an internet troll.
Yeah, I mean, if that guy likes it, and obviously, if his wife was proudly showing off what he made, probably that guy is proud of it. Like, if you're proud of it, who cares? Like, he wasn't trying to sell them. He wasn't trying to just like, look at my cool stuff. Don't be mean.
Yeah. Yeah, if somebody's happy doing something, like, and then like also if you actually think it through, if that was the actual situation as he described in the article, maybe she didn't even grab like the latest stuff. Like, did this guy's first 10 things he facet look amazing, right? Like, if I was like, hey, Sarah, go into the shop and find a rock that I did something to, and it represents me to like show to someone else, like, maybe you don't grab the thing that I think of, or like you grab something that I did 3 years ago. Like, I don't, I don't know. But and then he just went on in the article to be like, oh yeah, like join clubs, like go learn from these people, like all this stuff. I'm like, just because that works for you doesn't mean anything. And there's a lot of different ways to learn stuff.
You think they had videos on faceting, like that you bought to show you how to do it?
I haven't seen any ads for like a VHS or like Beta?
Yeah.
Betamax?
I guess so.
Or reel-to-reel? No, reel-to-reel films?
A little different to learn something from a book versus a video. So, I mean, I can see the benefit of seeing something done in real time versus like photo. And like, we know from the magazines that photos don't exactly show things clearly all the time.
I have, I'm going to butcher his last name, I can't think of it, John something. His book Gem Cutting from 1955, and he has a great chapter in there on faceting using faceting machines. And after reading it, I feel like you could plop me in front of a faceting machine, and I could definitely make a thing.
Yeah.
And then with practice, I can make something decent, I think. So, whatever. That is what it is, I guess, but it's interesting. That was the first time I've read an article in this where I'm like, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah. What's the next article? I only have one more because
I have one more,
okay.
And that is Map Maker to the Rockhounds. And this was good. This was a good article. I liked this one. I thought that, so basically, it's an article about a guy, and Dale Helaman?
Sure.
Whatever. I don't feel bad butchering his name, but yeah. So it's interesting to me because maps are something that people fail at miserably.
Yeah.
There is zero reason to publish a garbage map.
Especially now.
And even back in the 70s, there's plenty of tools at your disposal to aid you in hand-drawn maps, good maps, like whatever the thing is. There's plenty of resources available. Like, you could go, in 1976, everything was mapped. Maybe not like all the old logging roads and all that stuff, but like, for the most part, you could have a map and use it as the basis for drawing rock deposits, mineral deposits, as an amateur.
What he did.
Yes. So he made his own, like, rock maps to sell. Like, that was kind of like it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, he was basically just kind of like angry about people's terrible maps, and he was like, I'm going to do it myself. And there was also a really long rant in there about, like, the quality of four-wheel drive vehicles.
So he like takes his four-wheel drive vehicle out and he drives around and he maps stuff, and he was like, four-wheel drive vehicles, by the way, they have all these things wrong with them.
Yeah. Well, there's some photos in the magazine of the maps, and those will be up on the website. You can go check that out under episode number 7 on currentlyrockhounding.com/podcast, and you can go check it out. But at the time of recording this, you can jump on Amazon and buy them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can buy these maps, these beautiful...
All 6?
You can buy 3 of them on Amazon and eBay.
Yeah.
For $20 right now with $4 shipping, so I didn't buy them because I'm a cheapskate.
There are also maps of like Southern California.
Yeah.
So
but
not exactly a place we go much.
Yeah, they are out there and they look very nice. They're very well done maps, and I kind of like his whole motivation through disappointment.
Yeah.
Kind of resonates with me a little bit, because a lot of what I do is precisely that. Like the videos. Where the motivation to do the videos was because I was disappointed in everything that was out there. The motivation for the website was because the few rockhounding websites out there are trash. They were trash. They still are trash. So I'm trying to do the opposite. And I kind of like that as like a motivating factor in doing something good. Being like, this thing makes me mad, or I hate this thing. Don't just like dwell on the hate, but be like, I'm going to make the best dang maps there are. And that's kind of cool. I kind of like that.
I liked it didn't seem like he had any sort of like background in map making or geography or anything. He showed an example of what he does. He like drives to an intersection and he stops and he makes this like 20 character line of like code where he's like, C for gravel or road, and then like a number for something else, and then like, oh, how does the road bend, or does it go straight? Okay, if I went straight, what kind of road is it? Does it bend? Does it go straight? And it was like this crazy code that he made up, which I feel like there probably was better ways to go about it, but if that worked, clearly it worked for him. So you don't have to have like a deep educational like background in something to do it.
It reminds me of the crew change guide.
Yeah.
Now, that would be its own full podcast, and I figure we can touch on that lightly here. The crew change directory guide is put out by this guy named Paul, and Paul has been traveling around America hopping freight trains for 35 years, and maybe longer, 35 years, 40 years, and has produced a directory on how to go about getting on freight trains. And he has a similar code system where it's like everything's abbreviated and like you can learn the code. And once you've learned the code, like, you know, like, go here, turn east, go blank, this road, like, yeah, everything's abbreviated and you can quickly decipher it. And once you stare at it long enough, like, your mind looks at, you know, RRX, and you're like, railroad crossing, and then railroad overpass, and all these different things. So it definitely made me think of that. So
it said he devised an electronic navigation system that would record the direction he's going, the distance, and like make that into coordinates, and then he had some sort of thing that displayed and tracked the coordinates, which seems, what did he say, was an electrical engineer? So I think so. Clearly was technologically knowledgeable, and he said he like was talking to companies and like the government to like sell his not proprietary, but his like own invented GPS system. And like,
I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you have any other comments? I didn't like how Rock and Gem magazine set this article up. So the articles, there's 3 columns of text on each page, and then sometimes there's one of those columns, at least most pages, the outer column is ads, and this article was a total of 8 columns, so 2 pages and 2 columns, 3 pages, but it was spread out over 8 pages. There was multiple pages with 2 columns of ads and 1 column of text.
Yeah.
And I get that probably the ads are where they make the money for sure, but it felt very excessive to be like, turn the page, 1 column, turn the page, 1 column. Like, that was too much.
You got to run that 1970s ad blocker.
Oh.
That's a sheet of white paper.
Oh.
A sheet of white paper that cover them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that this was definitely an advertisement intense issue.
Yeah.
And I didn't like how some of the formatting is. Like,
sometimes
many of the articles or even some of the columns will be split. It'll be like a column will start on page 6, continued on page 26, continued on page 40. And I'm like, come on. Like, can we just like put them all together?
There was one where it was 1 column, but the first 2/3 was a continuation of one article, and the last third was a continuation of another article. And it's not. The priority is the ads, I think, and the less of the reading experience. But yeah.
Definitely. Well, in the next episode of the Previously Rockhounding podcast, we'll be looking at Rock and Gem magazine from May 1976. Silver and fire agates, field trips from Baja to Utah, basics of carving, how to clean minerals, bicentennial jewelry, and jewelry of the zodiac.
You'd think at this point they wouldn't be like, hey, Baja, we got Baja, guys. And they always have Baja. How many more issues are going to have Baja?
Hopefully it's not jewelry of the Zodiac Killer.
Oh.
Wait, what year did that happen? We'll find out next time. If you like this kind of content, you can subscribe to us on all the major podcast platforms, and you can find links to the other things that we do on YouTube and Instagram by visiting the website, currentlyrockhounding.com, and I will catch you guys on the next podcast.